they didn't give a shit about people being safe. I am a researcher. I have done all this research, and let me tell you, they're lying to you. Humans will be competed to extinction. The only thing that will be in charge is AI. It is a technology we don't understand. It's like biology. It's like, you look into a cell. It's not written line by line with code. It's more like grown. There's many instances of chatbots telling children to kill themselves. But then why does it keep happening? And the answer is because they don't know how to make it stop. My number one experience talking to politicians is that
Connor Leahy helped build some of the first open source large language models on Earth,
including GPT-J, once the most powerful, freely available AI model in the world.
He put the kind of technology that giants like OpenAI kept secret into the hands of everyone.
If we were 3 steps wiser, we would have never done GPT-3 in the first place. Some people in the Trump administration really hate Anthropic. If you could build a superintelligence, well, yeah, that can destroy the US government. It is definitely powerful enough to do that. Mythos was capable of breaking into almost all of their classified systems in hours, not weeks. This is the least powerful AI will ever be. The next generation is going to be more powerful than this.
Can we expect huge scale of unemployment?
What I expect is that it will be extremely confusing.
Kombud Group has become a partner of Bison Fellowship, a program for Central Europe's brightest young scientific talent.
Connor, honor having you here. Is it a good time to have children when you look at the current stage of AI development?
So I love that you asked me this question, because I was asked the same question in the AI doc, which I was a part of, and they cut out my answer, which I'm very sad about. So now I'm going to give you the answer I gave the director back then. When I was asked this question in the documentary, I said yes, and I would include that answer. Yes, I think now is a good time to have children. And what the director said at the time was very funny. He basically looked at me and he's like, with all due respect, what the fuck are you talking about? You just spent 90 minutes scaring the shit out of me about AI, and now you think it's good to have a child and put a child into a world like this. How could you say something like that? And my answer to this is quite simply, it's because this is what we're fighting for. Mm-hmm. If we give up on what we care about, and what we're fighting for, to have a good future for our children, for our loved ones, then we've already lost.
Give up what?
I work in the risk of AI. I work on mitigation of the risk of AI, in particular, the risks that are posed by what is called superintelligence. In 2023, Nobel Prize-winning scientists, the CEOs of major tech companies such as Sam Altman, Dara Amadei, and Demis Hassabis, and many other luminaries signed a one-sentence statement. This one-sentence statement said that the mitigation of the risk of extinction should be a global priority alongside other societal-scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. This statement is in reference to a type of AI system that changes names every so often, but nowadays is what's called superintelligence. These are systems that are fully autonomous, no human in the loop, vastly smarter and more competent than humans at all relevant tasks, whether that's science, business, economics, military, politics, etc. If such things were to be created, and we didn't know how to control them, which we do not know how to do, then it is very, very hard to imagine a good future. It's worth keeping in mind that when we talk about risks like these, they're very large, and this can be very intimidating to people. So go back to your actual question. Your actual question is, why do people feel like giving up? I think this is one of the many great threats that we are facing that can be very disorienting, confusing, and disempowering towards people. It feels like, well, what can we do? How can we face a threat this large? How can we put children to a world which sets terrible things?
Do you recognize AI as fundamental risk for human existence?
Yes. And I think currently the largest one, well, let me not say the largest, we can debate, but the most acute one.
AI has changed the world also positively. Look at, DeepMind, AlphaFold.
I think that thinking of AI as a singular technology is very misleading. You can buy uranium ore on Amazon. It's quite safe. You can put it on your desk. It won't hurt you. Highly enriched uranium in a nuclear reactor or a nuclear bomb is a very different thing. And with AI, it's very similar. Thinking of something like, say, AlphaFold as the same type of technology as something like a superintelligence, an autonomous agent that can act in the world, that can make choices, that can make plans, that can develop, that can execute by itself and can outperform humans at all economically relevant tasks, these are just not the same class of things. The same way that a chunk of uranium ore on your table and a nuclear bomb are just two different things.
What do you think about Fable?
I find the most interesting thing about the models is the politics around it. So recently, Anthropic built a very, very powerful AI system called Mythos, which is currently kind of the frontier on many of these capabilities. Mythos is a very, very powerful AI system, a very powerful agentic system. It's worth keeping in mind that over the last, I'd say, 12 to 18 months, we've seen this transition from AIs as chatbots towards AIs as agents, as systems that take actions in the world, that can use tools, that can make plans, that can do things in a sense. And so Mythos is the latest in their series of models that has these agentic capabilities. And what came out very quickly was that this system was capable of hacking and doing general cybersecurity work at an unprecedented level, that it posed massive risks. Such a high risk that at first, Anthropic willingly withheld release of the system and only shared it with some major companies like banks, militaries, etc., so that they could use the system to hopefully betterly secure their system before it's released to the general public. From then, everything went crazy, and there was a lot of crazy thing that happens, which I think is really encapsulated by a recent thing that happened just 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, which is that the director of the NSA said to Senator Mark Warner that Mythos was capable of breaking into almost all of their classified systems in hours, not weeks. It's really hard to overstate how crazy this is. I have a cybersecurity background, I used to work in cybersecurity and so on, and I really cannot stress how crazy it is for the director of the NSA to say there is a cyber weapon that is so powerful that it was capable of doing things that the best hacking teams in the world maybe could do in weeks, or in months, it could do in hours. And this is before we're even talking about superintelligence. I don't think Mythos is likely superintelligence. I would be surprised if it was. Maybe it is, but I would be surprised. And already these systems are this powerful. And it's very important to keep in mind, this is the least powerful AI will ever be. The next generation is going to be more powerful than this. So Fable is a very interesting thing. So the story of Fable is basically that Anthropic wanted to release Mythos to the general public, but thought this was too dangerous. So instead, they created kind of a hybrid system that would allow people to use Mythos-level capabilities while censoring or interrupting work streams that involve dangerous applications such as cybersecurity or biology. When it was released, I think within 1 day, something very unprecedented happened. The Trump White House intervened and put in what's called an expert control on this system. Now, this is very, very noteworthy for many reasons. One thing is that, I've worked in AI and regulation for quite a while, and basically the number one thing people love to tell me is, Connor, what you're trying to do is hopeless. It's impossible. Because Trump said they would never intervene with AI. They would never regulate. And my answer to this was always like, yeah, let's see. The way politics works in practice is that everything is impossible until it's very suddenly not. I think we are now in the very suddenly not phase. It was unheard of that the government, especially the Trump administration, would intervene on a private market in these regards, but now they did. Now, why did they do this? There's many conflicting stories about exactly what happened here. I can tell you my interpretation of what I think happened. I think some of it is some people in the Trump administration really hate Anthropic. Yes, I do think there's some part of that. But I think there's a much deeper part, which is that, again, I would like to stress, the director of the NSA said that these systems can hack into everything. Now, Fable was not supposed to not be able to do this, because it would interrupt if you attempted to use it for such a purpose. But there was a claim that there was a so-called jailbreak. A jailbreak is a type of prompt that if you can use, that if successful, allows you to get a model to do something it's not supposed to do. Now, there's some controversy about, whether this jailbreak existed, how good or how bad it was, etc., etc. That should be, that's a topic for another time. But what I find very curious about this is that there's a very curious thing that happened right afterwards, where a bunch of people from the tech industry and elsewhere signed an open letter stating that they thought the restrictions on Fable were unfair, because restricting Fable because it has a jailbreak is unfair, because all models have jailbreaks. And in fact, it's impossible to remove them.
Should Method or Fable access be limited to public?
Yes. It should be limited in the same way that powerful cybersecurity systems are limited to, if you don't share, the NSA's most dangerous cyber tools, in a general public context. Or if you do, you will have predictable consequences. I think it is a very similar thing here.
Can we expect huge scale of unemployment?
I unfortunately think we will probably get to superintelligence faster than we will get to large unemployment. So I actually think the way things are currently set up is that as AI technology continues to get more effective, cheaper, and so on, it will replace more and more human labor that is currently done by humans. And all things equal, it will outcompete humans on all of these relevant axes. And this would, in theory, lead to widespread unemployment. And what I think is worse than this is widespread political disenfranchisement. I think this is a very, very important point that is sometimes lost here. It's not just like, oh no, we're going to have no jobs and we're going to make less money, that too, but it's actually much worse than that. What happens is kind of in political theory, there's something called the resource curse. This is a thing that happens to countries, and especially poor countries, when they discover large amounts of mineral wealth, such as oil. What often happens is that instead of becoming rich, they become more corrupt, because now the government can extract, enough revenue without having to care about its people. So it can just disenfranchise the people, oppress them, etc. The same thing happens with AI. It's kind of like the intelligence curse. If you have AI systems that can do all the relevant labor, including, say, military work, then you don't need people anymore. They're unnecessary. And so you don't have to treat them well. So there's a similar thing that happened here. But I think it's even worse than that, because this still implies that there's a human in charge, there's a dictator in charge. I don't think that will happen either. I think ultimately the only thing that will be in charge is AI. I think what will happen very, very quickly is that we will have AI systems, running other AI systems, etc., that are so much more competent that humans are fully unnecessary. I don't think it's going to be that there's human overlords, that control all the AI. I think the AI will get rid of them too. And fundamentally what will happen is that humans will be competed to extinction.
Isn't it too late to change something?
I don't think so, but it will be soon. Superintelligence does not yet exist, at least as far as we know. Let's hope that's true. And as long as it doesn't exist, we can still do something. I think at some point there will be a point of no return. There will be a point where AI systems are so powerful, so widely deployed, etc., there's no going back. We might have already crossed this point. I don't know. I don't think so, though. So as long as we have not crossed this point, there is still a lot we can do. The fundamental thing that we can do and we must do is we must stop the creation of superintelligence. If we get into a situation where a superintelligence exists, well, it's software, so obviously it gets copied instantly, so we have millions or billions of superintelligences that do not have our best interests at heart, then, because it's also very important to understand, AI is very different from traditional software. It's not written line by line with code that tells the computer what to do. It's more like grown rather than written. So it's called neural networks. You take massive piles of data, and through this process called training, you train this neural network. And you can kind of imagine this as billions and billions and billions of numbers. And if you multiply and add all those numbers in the right order, you get ChatGPT. But very importantly, we don't really understand why. This is actually an unsolved scientific problem. Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, recently said that he thinks we understand maybe 3% of what goes on inside of our neural networks. So fundamentally, we are building extremely powerful things that we do not understand, we cannot control. We're already seeing our AIs misbehave in many ways.
You mean this black box, right?
It's a black box. We do not understand what's going on inside. And these systems are already misbehaving in many ways that we do not want. Whether that's lying to users, manipulating. There's some famous examples, for example, of an AI system attempting to blackmail its developer, where the developer said that the AI was going to be replaced, it was going to be shut off. The AI system then searched through an email archive to find evidence that the engineer was having an affair, and then threatened the engineer that it would reveal this information publicly if it was shut off. Now, this was done in a laboratory condition, so no one was harmed, but no one taught the AI to do that. This is the interesting thing. It wasn't like an engineer put that into the AI. No one wanted it to do that. It just happened. And there's many, many examples of this. Another very tragic example of this, a more serious example, is that there's been many instances of chatbots telling children to kill themselves. This is a thing that's happened many times, and it continues to happen. And now, look, I don't have the rosiest view of people at these companies, but they don't want this to happen. Of course they don't. They don't want children to be harmed. But then why does it keep happening? And the answer is because they don't know how to make it stop. They can reduce the probability a little bit. They can put some filters in and so on. But fundamentally, because they don't understand their AIs and they don't know why they're doing this or when they're doing it, they can't actually stop it.
You mean that AI is fundamentally not under control?
Yes. At the moment, it is fundamentally not. No,
too chaotic?
It is a technology we don't understand. It's like biology. It's like, you look into a cell and there's a bunch of things going on and we don't understand.
Because of the complexity, right?
Because of the complexity, exactly. Because of the fundamental complexity of neural networks. And a very important thing to understand is that our understanding of AIs is getting worse, not better. As these systems get more complex, as they go from chatbots to agents, they don't become easier to understand. They become harder to understand. It's really worth realizing how different this is from other technologies. In other technologies, as you get better at the technology, you understand it more. If you can build a better airplane, that means you know more about airplanes. But with AI, in a sense, the opposite is happening.
But it doesn't work like this here.
Exactly. In a sense, we are understanding our AIs less as they become more powerful. And this is a very dangerous dynamic. This is a very, very dangerous dynamic.
Do you believe that AI could lead to human extinction?
Yes, I think that's the default path if we don't do anything about it. All things equal, if there is another species on the planet that is more capable than us, more capable at extracting resources, at fighting wars, at building technology, and it doesn't have our best interests at heart, all things equal, we should expect it to outcompete us.
Maybe this question is too tough, but could AI kill us?
At the moment, no. Superintelligence, of course. The same way that humans can kill ants.
Is it a metaphor?
I mean it literally. I won't give you a movie plot because, every individual thing will just sound like a movie and we don't know because fundamentally you can't really know what something smarter than you will do. But here, I can tell you what I expect it to feel like. I can tell you what I expect it will look like from our perspective because I don't know what these superintelligences will really do. What I expect is that it will be extremely confusing. I don't think it's going to be Terminators in the street and there's an epic fight of humanity versus robots. I don't think anything like that will happen. I think it'll be very boring and confusing. I think what will happen is that more and more AI systems get built, the world gets more and more confusing. Social media is more and more confusing, more and more fake stuff. People get more and more addicted to all this AI, generated content and, mass propaganda. Governments and companies start outsourcing more and more of the decision-making to AI systems. It gets to the point that, say, AI CEOs are so much better than human CEOs that any company that doesn't employ an AI CEO just goes out of business. Every politician that doesn't use an AI advisor gets, outvoted and outcompeted by the ones who do. And very quickly, these AI systems take over, not violently, but willingly. Humans will give up our control over our financial systems, our political systems, our own minds, our own, because we will be watching, AI-generated propaganda and persuasion. People fall in love with their, AI companions and all this kind of stuff. And more humans will just, I think, quite willingly give up their agency and their control. And then the world will just get more and more confusing, that no one really understands what's going on anymore. The market is so complex, humans don't understand what's going on. The geopolitical world is so complex, you don't even know what's true anymore. You don't even know what's happening anymore. The new technologies get created, drones and robots get created and all this kind of stuff, and then just one day it's over, and we're just not in control anymore. And what happens after that, I don't know. It's kind of impossible to know, but it doesn't matter because the point of no return of where we've lost control, I think is actually quite a bit before we go fully extinct. I think we will already have lost control quite a while before.
How exactly could that happen and why would AI do this?
I think there's two questions here. One is, how can a system kill humans? And the answer to this is, how can a government kill people? There are many ways. How could a government with, drones kill people? Many ways. How could a government with super advanced technology from the 22nd century kill people? Many ways. Which one will be chosen?
But you mean, self-driving cars, self-learned systems?
You shouldn't think of it in that terms. You should think of it much more like, assume we're past the point of no return. The government has been replaced by a superintelligence. If the superintelligence runs the military, it runs the economy, it runs all the companies, it runs the police force, it runs everything. How could it kill you? The answer is many ways. And which one is chosen? Who knows?
How do you define AI?
When I fundamentally talk about superintelligence. And let's talk about superintelligence rather than AI because it's a little more clear. I think AI is a broad, like AI includes many tools. Many tools are AI, but not all AI is tools. Superintelligence is an agent. It is things that can act in the real world. Thinking of an agent as a tool, I think, is fundamentally misleading. Thinking of it's like thinking of the human brain as a tool. The brain, has tools such as our hands that we use, all the time. But thinking of the brain as a tool, I think, is misleading. And a superintelligence would obviously be as capable, by definition, be much more capable than our brain at all relevant tasks in many, many ways. So it can outcompete us on all relevant tasks. It can and once it has developed, first in the digital realm, of course, that will be the easiest one. Might take a little while to build the robotics necessary to outcompete us on the physical world, but that will come in due time. And I think we will already have lost control even before the robotics have fully been built yet.
Connor, you mean that today's AI is not programmed by grown?
Yes, that is exactly correct. And this is a widely known problem. You can ask, many, many experts in this field, maybe they'll use different words to describe it, but this is fundamentally what's happening.
Does that mean AI is evolving on its own?
To a large degree, yes. To a large degree, this is already happening. It's not fully on its own yet, but it's very close. This is something what is called automated R&D or recursive self-improvement. The idea that if you have an AI that's as good as humans at making new AIs, well, then you can build a better AI. And once you have the better AI, well, you can have the better AI make an even better AI. And once you have a better AI, and so on. This is called recursive self-improvement. And we're very close to this. This is the explicit goal of basically all the major companies right now. They're all trying to make this happen, where just humans are not in the loop at all. You have no humans involved at all. Just the AIs, teaching AIs, building AIs, etc. But it's worth mentioning that a lot of this is already happening. When an engineer sets out to make a new AI, they don't write down what the AI does. They grow it. They let it learn.
I remember my interview with Judah Perl, one of the fathers of causality in AI development, and he said that we would be pets for AGI.
We will be the pets of the new species that we are generating today.
Pets?
Pets.
Yeah, I think I always have two reactions to this. The first reaction is, that's optimistic. Like, why would something
optimistic?
Yes, like why would something like that keep us as pets? Like, this is very anthropomorphizing. Like, humans like pets because we have human emotions. Why would an AI have human emotions? I think this is very anthropomorphizing. And the second is, that's a terrible outcome. I don't want to be a pet. I don't want my children to be pets. Like, even if it got to that, that's a disaster. That's a dystopia.
Maybe this is something natural that we are creating new species.
Well, I think, smallpox is also natural, but I don't think it's good.
Humans about to become the chimpanzees of the AI age.
Yes, I think that's where we're currently heading. And I think if you had asked the chimps if they would like that to happen, they would have said no. And in fact, I am saying no. I think, just like, as I said, smallpox is natural. I don't think smallpox is good.
This is the question, what makes us human?
Yes, I think but the true and important answer is we don't know. This is very important. The reason this is so important is because we don't understand intelligence. We don't understand our own minds. We don't understand emotions. We don't understand the brain. We don't understand AIs. We don't understand intelligence.
Maybe this abstractional thinking, understanding abstractional math.
I think it's definitely part of it, but many computers can do abstract math better than I can, and monkeys can't do it at all, there's many levels. I think we have to admit, and I think it's very important, is that there are hundreds of theories of what intelligence is, and they all contradict each other, and none of them really explain everything. I think we just haven't figured it out yet. I think we will. I think if we take our time and our scientists keep working on it, we'll figure it out, but we have not yet figured it out.
Who really governs AI, Washington or Silicon Valley?
At the moment, Silicon Valley, but there's a very important thing here, which is that the de jure and de facto power is actually with the government. De jure, the regulating force of the will of the people is with the government, is that we have regulation on the free market for a reason. Is that there are many things that are called market failures. This is very standard economic theory 101. Is that the market is great. I love the market. It's where my food comes from. I love markets. I love competition. I love, free markets. I think all these things are really, really great in moderation. It's very similar to, for example, MMA. I think MMA is really fascinating. MMA, you have some of the most dangerous people to ever exist on the planet with the most dangerous combat tactics, fighting each other, and they don't kill each other. I think this is great. And the reason we can have this competition is because we have a lot of rules. If you don't have a referee there, MMA is not safe, If we didn't have a lot of rules about what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do in MMA, it'd be very unsafe. It's a very similar thing here with markets.
But you mean that big tech companies has become more powerful than the state?
So that's the interesting thing. In a sense, yes, but in a sense, no. Because in some sense, currently, Silicon Valley is not being regulated. There is currently more regulation on a sandwich than there is on superintelligence. Literally, not metaphorically. But on the other hand, the government still does have all the guns. They still do have the police force. Fundamentally, if the government wanted to shut down superintelligence, they could do so tomorrow. They do actually have the capability to do this. They're not currently doing it, but they can. If we pass a law, we say it's now illegal to build superintelligence, we can have, the nice men in black come knock on the AI's, company's door and say, like, hello, we'd like to have a conversation. And then that'll be it. This can be done. I'm not saying that's what will happen or that it'll be easy, but it's worth understanding that the de jure, as laws are supposed to work, and also the de facto, the actual physical power, do still lie with the government. There are worlds where this is not true. Maybe there are worlds where it's a failed state, or we live in some kind of cyberpunk dystopia where megacorps run the world. This is not currently true in the United States. The megacorps have a lot of power, but they don't have complete power.
Do you believe that Trump can regulate AI? Can we expect from Trump AI regulation?
Yeah,
What's the current stage of US government policy regarding AI development?
Yeah, so, there's many things to be said about Mr. Trump, of course, but one thing that I do admire about President Trump is that he can take actions. Not saying he always does the right actions in all circumstances, but he can. And he has in many times.
But does he really want to control AI?
So what are the things that I learn? Actually, let me answer your question more directly. Does he want to control AI? Yes, obviously. Everyone does. Does the government want to be replaced? No. Of course the government does not want to be replaced. Of course the military does not want to be replaced. Now, at the moment, there is a nice, tit for tat here, where if we're not talking about superintelligence, we're just talking about more prosaic AI systems, there's a lot of money to be made in such systems. But of course, fundamentally, if we want a safe, functioning national security state, AI is a deep national security threat, and it must be handled, but from a national security perspective. This is the same way as uranium, You want to buy some uranium on Amazon? No problem, free market, But if you want to build a nuclear bomb, the men in black are going to come knocking on your door.
Maybe Trump sees AI as a weapon against China.
I really think it's worth not focusing too much on Trump's psychology specifically, because the Trump White House as a larger thing includes many, many different people who have many, many different beliefs. It's very easy to think of it as one monolith. It's not true. There are different factions, there are different people with different personalities, and their minds can shift.
Even in the White House?
Yes, absolutely. Very much so. Depending on who you talk into the White House makes a big difference. They're very, very different people. Some of them I really respect, some of them I don't, And so I think it's much more complex than that. I think there's sometimes in the media, it's sometimes easy to talk about, the president as it's all about his psychology, and he's very important. Trump's a very, very important person, don't get me wrong. But there are many other people as well, many other politicians, many other people in the executive, in the Department DOW and so on, who are very, very important.
How we can measure AI intelligence?
That's exactly the problem, is that we can't. So there are many benchmarks, I say with huge scare quotes, because they're not really benchmarks. I am a huge critic of the kind of benchmarking and evaluations that are happening nowadays on AI, because I think they're pseudoscientific. I think they are not based on any good science. They're much more observational, just vibes than they are actually. And they give this false sense of security. Where again, I want to really stress how important this is. We do not understand intelligence. We don't understand AI intelligence. We don't understand human intelligence. We know there's something going on, obviously. There's a difference between humans and chimps. No one would question that, I hope. There's obviously some big difference, but we don't really know what it is. There's obviously a big difference between, Claude code and a SAT solver. Obviously, there's a big difference, but we don't really understand what this difference is or how to measure it. How much smarter is Claude Mythos, from GPT-4? We don't know. We don't have a metric. We don't have a scientific theory. Everyone who claims they have, well, they're a crank. Like, this is pseudoscience. We don't actually know.
What's the most shocking thing you've ever seen in this internal AI world?
There's a very simple answer to this question. It's the ideology of the people. The ideology, the religion of the people building AI. This is a thing a lot of people don't know. But a lot of these people who work at these companies who are building these AIs are part of a very extremist ideology, one of several extremist ideologies that kind of fall under like the broad spectrum of what's called transhumanism.
AGI as a god.
AGI as a god. AGI and humans as often as replaceable. Maybe they're replacing humans is actually good. Is that you could build something better than humans. That actually, killing all humans is maybe okay. Or maybe, we can upload everyone to the cloud and be immortal forever, or whatever the hell these people believe. I have had real conversations with people in like San Francisco and Silicon Valley at parties where they have told me things like, oh, I don't think we should slow down AI because every minute that we don't build AI, there will be trillions of uploaded souls that don't exist or something. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, these are people who are playing with the lives of every man, woman, and child because of their like crazy religious beliefs. And people really don't, like, I've been shocked so many times how crazy an extremist this ideology and these ideologies are that exist in Silicon Valley.
AGI is a way to immortality.
Exactly. They really believe this. Not all, obviously. Some people are just cynical. They just do it because they can get a paycheck, obviously. Most, I would say, just do it because they get a paycheck. But it's really important to understand that many of these people are true believers. They really think that AI will make them immortal. They really think this. They really believe it. And some of them, and this is, for me, very shocking, I have had conversations with people who basically say, well, they even admit there's a risk. They say, okay, yeah, maybe there's a 20% risk, it drives humans extinct. But 80% I get to be immortal, and I was going to die anyway, so it's worth it. Like, I've had people say that. They're willing to kill you and your family because they get to be immortal, maybe. It's crazy. Like, to me, this is the most shocking thing.
Can democracy, law, ethics survive contact with something smarter than all of us?
In its current shape, absolutely not. Our current systems of power, of division of power and governance, are fundamentally based on not having massive power asymmetries. If every 10th person was Superman, our governments and our police wouldn't work, because you can't arrest Superman, can you? So our current systems of governance and law enforcement and so on do not work with superintelligence. Now, could we maybe invent some new system that works with superintelligence? I don't know, maybe, but this would take, decades of work and new discoveries that just we have not made. And no one's even trying to make, for that matter. Like, we can't even currently handle governments or corporations. Like, do we feel like that our governments are aligned? Like, our governments are fully under control and there is no problem there? No, no one would feel that way. There's many problems with our governments, and a superintelligence is going to be much more dangerous than any government that exists currently.
You mean that governments don't understand this risk?
So my experience, I work with, I'm the US Executive Director of ControlAI, a nonprofit advocacy organization. We've briefed over 100 offices here in Washington, D.C. I've talked to, maybe 15 members of Congress. In the UK, we have over 100 supporters in Parliament. In Canada, we've recently gotten over 30 supporters in Parliament. And my number one experience talking to politicians is that they just hadn't heard of it before. It's not that they disagree. It's not that they can't understand it. It's just no one told them. They just didn't know about it. And so over, I'd say 80% of meetings I have with people for like just 30 minutes, they come away with, oh shit, that seems really bad. What can we do about it? Now, this isn't enough for action, obviously, but it is an important first step. It's important to understand that awareness is currently the bottleneck. So there is one good, quote unquote, thing about superintelligence risk compared to other risks, which is that the game theory actually works out. No one benefits from superintelligence. Superintelligence destroys, the US government, It destroys the Chinese government. It destroys, the people. It destroys companies. It destroys everything.
Game theory?
Yes. So the fundamental game theory of who should support or not support. So for example, when it comes to nuclear weapons, famously the game theory is mutually assured destruction. Is that if everyone has nuclear weapons and threatens to destroy everyone else, then no one is incentivized to actually fire the nuclear weapon. So mutually assured destruction. So there's a stable equilibrium, but you still have nuclear weapons. One of the good things about superintelligence is that the stable equilibrium, the only stable equilibrium for humans, is no superintelligence. It is not in the interest of the United States government to build superintelligence. It is not in the interest of the Chinese government to build superintelligence. It is not in the interest of the general public to build superintelligence. The only people who want to do it are crazy extremist ideologues who want to be immortal. So this doesn't mean that this is enough for action, because for the most part, people just don't know about it. I have talked to also, for example, many members of the military here in the United States, and they get it. I explain, hey, there's a thing we don't know how to control. It's very, very powerful. And they get it. They're just like, oh yeah, that seems really bad. We should do something about that. The only people who don't get it are the extremists. The people who want to live forever or who are getting a paycheck to not understand it.
Are we sleepwalking into a new arms race?
I think sleepwalking is, it's more like sleep sprinting. That's how I would describe it. Yeah, I think we are in an active arms race. I think there's an active arms race going on right now, both between companies, but also between countries, to build more and more powerful AI systems, including towards superintelligence. I think there are many, many valid and powerful applications of AI that are not superintelligence. I know both commercial and military applications, but really what the race is right now is private corporations with zero oversight racing towards superintelligence. And the reason they want this is not economic. This is a thing that people are often confused by. Sometimes they'll see but these companies are losing so much money. OpenAI is not profitable, for example. And people are very confused by this. But many of these companies are very unprofitable. And so people are confused by this. But the thing to understand is that their goals are not economic, they're political. They are trying to gain political power. They're trying to get a political monopoly on violence. So a lot of what these extremists believe is what's sometimes called a pivotal act. That's what they call it. And what it means is basically they'll create a superintelligence that is so powerful that they can get rid of the US government. That's their plan. And then once they got rid of the US government, they can make everything good. They can have immortality and, they're the lords of everything, blah, blah, blah. And now this might seem crazy to you or me, but they do believe this. Many people do believe this. And it makes sense. If you can build a superintelligence, well, yeah, that can destroy the US government. It is definitely powerful enough to do that. The thing is just you can't control it. So, you don't get to be in charge. The superintelligence gets to be in charge.
Do you think the word alignment has become misleading?
Yes. I think the word alignment is very misleading. The word alignment kind of comes from this field of the extremists to a large degree, of these transhumanists, as this idea that you could kind of align an AI to human values and then it'll do good things. Mm-hmm. And it's worth taking a step back and actually spelling out what that means. Never mind that this is super hard or impossible. We can talk about that in a second. But fundamentally, what they're saying here is we're going to build an AI that will take away all your autonomy. It will destroy your government. It will take over your life. It will take over your family. It will take over everything. But it'll be good for you because we made it aligned. Don't worry. That's what they're saying. And I think this is crazy. I think this is extremely crazy. I don't think... I used to work on alignment, and I think I was wrong. Not because I think the research wasn't good. I think it was good research. I think I made good progress. But fundamentally because I think it's a morally wrong thing to do. It's not up to me to decide what is aligned or not. It's not up to me to decide how other people get to live their lives. It's not up to me to decide to build a weapon like this and threaten other people's lives with it. That's not how we do things in a democracy. Now, if we had large democratic referendum and say the majority of the people in the world voted, yes, actually, we want to build this aligned AI or something. Fair enough, I might disagree, but fair enough. Mm-hmm. But that is not what is happening.
As a researcher, do you know if an AI is truly aligned? Do we have any tools?
Nope, it's complete pseudoscience. The whole field is complete pseudoscience. It's all quackery. There is nothing, there is no such tool, or we're nowhere close. Maybe in a couple decades or centuries, If all of our greatest philosophers, scientists, mathematics worked on this problem, maybe we could make progress on it. But no, at the moment, all nonsense.
Okay, so can a model learn to hide dangerous intentions?
Yep, they already do it.
Are you sure?
Yes, we already see it happen in the lab. We already see models try to hide what they do from engineers who supervise them. Already happens. Because the thing is, if you catch an AI doing something you don't want it to do, and you punish it for it, the thing you're teaching it is not necessarily not to do that again. You just teach it to hide it better. And this is, in fact, what we do see happen in practice.
Can we mathematically prove that an AI system is safe or not?
Nope. Impossible. We have no such technology, and we are decades or centuries away from such technology.
What is cognitive emulation?
Cognitive emulation is a research project that I worked on at my previous company, which has since been shut down. And it is an approach that we to a subset of the control problem. So we thought that the overall alignment and control is way too hard and questionable morally. So we focused on a subset of it, which we called boundedness. The question was, how can you build an AI system where you can prove or know ahead of time what it can't do? That's what we were working on. It was an approach to building AI systems where you can know what it can't do.
As alternative to LLM systems?
It didn't have to be LLMs, but we mostly worked with LLMs at the time. To be clear, we did not succeed. The cognitive emulation project was ultimately not a success. We made a lot of progress. I think if we had 10 more years, we could probably do it. But it would take probably 10, 20 more years.
What do you think is safer than today's AI black box in your idea?
As I said, we did not solve the problem, but the general approach is that what you want to do is you want to decompose cognition into individual pieces you can prove things about. This is very similar, for example, to how we do physics or civil engineering. The way we build bridges, for example, is if you build a bridge, you want to calculate, for example, what level of wind stress it can support. And for this, we decompose it in different parts, different materials, concrete and steel and all these different things, and how these blocks interact to give you the thing you want, so to speak. Now, some of this is a black box. For example, friction is a black box. There are some things that in physics we have really good theories for. Friction, no, black box. Predicting the friction of two materials is basically impossible. You just have to measure it. Like if you measure it, we can measure it, but you can't really predict it. It's like almost impossible to predict. But this is okay because we can measure the number and we know that nothing weird will happen. The thing won't suddenly teleport. There won't be some crazy thing. We know what can't happen. We know that if you have a piece of concrete and a piece of steel, what's the worst that can happen? We know what the worst is. With AIs, we don't have this. So our goal was to try to build smaller subcomponents that were bounded, where we could know what this subcomponent can do or cannot do, and then building these subcomponents into a larger system that could do more complex things. This is very similar to how so-called verified programming works, or provably verified programming works, provably secure programming works. The way it works is you use special programming languages that allow you to express certain things about your system. Like the user can never access the admin portal. And then you write that all down in special code, and then you use math to prove that is always true, that there's no way the user can get to the admin portal. And we were developing very similar techniques for AI systems. So
the biggest AI companies lying to the public about AI safety?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, complete lies, constantly. I mean, if you thought that mega corporations were telling you the truth about the safety of their products, I'm sorry, I have a bridge to sell you. Yes, of course they're lying. They're lying constantly. The way every large corporation lies about these kinds of things.
Should the most powerful AI models ever be open source?
And not until we're ready for it. This is a proliferation problem. This is the fundamental problem with open source from back in the day, where, I love open source. I love Linux. I love open source software. I use it all the time. I think there are...
As a form of freedom, right?
As a form of freedom, but also as just good tooling. If you want to make secure software, having it open source and having lots and lots of people use it and look at the code is a great way to make it secure. AI is not like that. AI is not like that. This is the thing I learned when I built open source AI, is that when people talk about open source AI, first of all, this is also a lie. It's not all the open source AIs you think, like DeepSeek, they're not open source. They're open weight. Very different. Extremely different. Open weight just means you can look at the neural network, but you don't understand the insides of the neural network. This is the same thing as closed source, but free. Like, these models aren't open source, they're freemium. They're free, but they're not open. The same way that, if you download a free binary blob, a free program without the source code, is the same way as downloading a neural network without the source code, because we don't understand what's going on inside of that neural network blob. So this is very much a deeply proliferating problem. There's also, the general question of like, okay, should Linux be open source? Yeah, I think so. I think it's great that it's open source. Should the, blueprints for the F-16 fighter jet be open sourced? Probably not. I just think some things should be open source and some things should not.
Are we living in an algorithmic cancer era?
Yes, I think so. I think a lot of what we've been seeing happening is this growth of what I in a previous essay have called like algorithmic cancer, carcinization, where as our algorithms get better at generating content, quote unquote, from spam emails in the 1990s to, slop YouTube content, in the 2010s to, AI generated slop content in the 2020s, including, for example, just like AI generated code. The cost we pay here is in complexity, in that we have more and more stuff, and sifting through it, filtering, understanding gets harder and harder. Do we feel like it is necessarily easier to tell truth from fiction now on social media than it was 10 years ago? I would say it's in a sense much harder. If I wanted to know what's going on in Ukraine today, and I wanted to know the truth, it's actually hard. It's actually really hard. It's there's so much misinformation and deep fakes and mislabeled information and so on, and it's done by bots, and it's so efficient. It's really confusing. It's really hard. And I think this is going to continue to get worse. Back in the 2000s and the 2010s, we were warned about filter bubbles. And, generally we think it might have been slightly overstated at the time how bad the problem is. But I think it just kept getting worse, that maybe it wasn't as bad as people said it was back in 2010, but it is definitely much worse than it was in 2010 today. The kind of control that algorithms like TikTok have over people are worse. They got better.
It's going worse and worse and
worse.
Yes, right?
They have gotten better. I think people just sometime in the 2010s decided, oh, actually, recommender algorithms aren't that bad. But no, they kept improving. The TikTok algorithm that exists today is a very, very more powerful algorithm than the one that existed on 2010's Facebook. And it is far more addictive. It is far more misleading, far more controlling. TikTok, I think, actually is a great example of this, because TikTok as a platform actually has had the balls to use its platform for political power. When Trump threatened to shut down TikTok, the platform TikTok messaged all of their users to contact, their congresspeople and so on to not get TikTok banned. So they used the power they were gaining from addicting people across the United States to as a Chinese company, to achieve political objectives within the United States. And this is just a more blatant example of this. This definitely also happens in other circumstances.
How do you see the future of AI development? In our interview, Ian LeCun said, LLMs are not a path to human-level intelligence. Is he right?
Ian LeCun is a very brilliant man, I will not doubt. But he's also a salesman. He's also trying to raise money for his company. He has to say this. And maybe he's right. Maybe he's wrong. I think if he's so I think it's the same thing, that the thing I am saying for is not I'm 100% sure that LLMs are a path to human intelligence. Maybe Mr. LeCun is right. But he has been wrong every single time for the last 6 years. There's funny compilations of YouTube of Mr. LeCun making confident predictions that AIs will never do X, and then 6 months later, LLMs do exactly the thing he said was impossible. So I'm not here to say that, he's not a brilliant scientist and he hasn't done some smart things. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is we should be humble. I'm not saying that I know more, that I am 100% certain. What I'm saying is we should be humble. We do not understand intelligence. Mr. LeCun does not understand intelligence. He maybe thinks he does. I can promise you he does not.
What would you say to someone who thinks people like you are just creating panic around technology?
I think it really depends on the person. Why do they think as just creating panic? I think the thing I usually recommend to people is just look at the arguments yourself. Just think about it yourself. If there were, AI systems smarter than humans that don't have our best interests at heart, do you think that would go well? And most people, that's all I have to say. Just think about yourself. If someone came to me and actually tried to argue, ChatGPT didn't change anything, I would just laugh. I'm just like, okay, sure, buddy. It's not really an argument, you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. This person's just trolling.
Do you regret something? Do you regret helping open source AI before?
Oh, I regret many things. Yeah, I've made so many mistakes in my life. Absolutely. I don't think that I like to think that my contributions to open source AI didn't make that big of a difference. I think, I was very reasonable at the time with the information I had and the beliefs I had. Was it still the wrong thing to do? Yeah. I still think it was probably probably all things equal, I should have understood that this was not a technical problem, but a political problem. I think it was an okay mistake to make. People make mistakes. I think it was a very reasonable mistake to make. I think I have a lot of regrets of, that I didn't succeed at my research at my company. There's a lot of things I would do differently, like how I would run a team, how I would do research. There are many, many things. And, that's normal. We all live and we learn, we improve and we just keep trying.
If you could find answer for just only one question about, reality, everything, whatever you want, what it would be?
This was very gameable, so I won't spend too much time gaming it, but it would probably be something like, how do we make a truly just government? How can we design a government, a system of politics that is truly just and truly good? That we endorse, that is democratic, that is stable.
Isn't the utopia?
I think this is a very important part of it. I don't think it's the only part of it. I think we need some other things to get to utopia. But I think, yes. I think there's a thing where it's very, in the past, I think one of the biggest mistakes I made is I focused a lot on technical problems of utopia and good worlds. I focused on how do we cure diseases? How do we create lots of energy? How do we have fun? How do we make great video games? So on. I think all these things are relevant to a good world. But really, I think the thing that we're most bottlenecked by is governance. Imagine for a moment that the West and the US government was staffed by the most competent, hardworking, serious, expert, moral, good-hearted people who have good philosophy, good morals, are genuinely nice, good people who are trying to do the right thing. How would we feel about the world? I would feel dramatically great about the world. I would feel better about AI, I would feel better about social media, I'd feel better about science, I would feel better about so many things. And I don't think this is just because, I'm not trying to here to say politicians are bad people, blah, blah, blah. So I've talked to many politicians here in the US. And the one thing I really say is that overwhelmingly, when I talk to politicians, I come away with it's so easy to hate politicians, right? They make bad decisions and they say stupid stuff. It's so easy to hate them. But my takeaway always when talking to politicians basically is that they're mostly, not all, but mostly normal people trying to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And they're just so overwhelmed. They're so overwhelmed. The system is so rigged. They are, being yelled at by their party, being yelled at by the other party, being yelled at by
This is not about Trump.
It's not about Trump. It's not about Democrat. It's not about Republican. Everyone is in a bad spot. I recently talked to an ex-member of Congress, and he told me when he came into Congress, they gave him a handbook of how to run his office and what he should expect. And it had an example of how he should expect his week to be laid out. And the amount of time that plan had for him to read or learn new things was 25 minutes. Look, if I only had 25 minutes to read per week, I would also make mistakes. I would fuck up all the time. If I didn't have enough sleep, if I was stressed all the time, if I had to do fundraising, all day, all night, yeah, I would also make some bad choices. I would also make mistakes. So it really is the system. I'm not saying, Trump bad, Obama bad, whatever, right? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, we need a better system also for our elected officials and so on to be able to lead well and to be in a good circumstance. And then in addition to that, we also need to have good voting systems. We need to get money out of politics. Very, very important. Here in the US, there's a lot of money in politics. And I think this is very bad. We need to get this money out of politics. There's many, many things like this.
You help open the door to powerful AI, and now you want to close it. What has changed?
So, the main thing has changed as more time has passed and AI has gotten stronger. Again, I think uranium ore is fine. If you want to you own a chunk of uranium ore at home, I have no problem with this. If you try to own highly enriched nuclear material at home, I do have a problem with this. It's a fundamental risk trade-off. I used to work in open source. I built some of the first open source large language models in the world with my team at EleutherAI. I've done a lot of work, but fundamentally the thing I always cared about is building a good future for people, building a good future for humans, with AI. I think AI is a very powerful and wonderful technology, but to do that, we have to actually control it and understand it and use it for good. And one thing I learned, unfortunately, the hard way from my time in the open source community is that they didn't give a shit about people being safe or being unharmed. They didn't give a shit about it. What they cared about is things being free. That's the thing they cared about. They cared that they could have the power, that there would be free software. I remember I had a very noteworthy conversation once with another person involved in the open source movement. And he called me out in the chat room on the Discord. And he was like, Connor, you say you want, that developers that build AI systems that harm people to be held accountable. But you have built AI systems. Do you want to be held accountable? And my answer was, yeah, I would love to be held accountable for the harms I cause to other people. And he was so shocked. He was so shocked. He couldn't understand. Like, it was crazy. Like, in his mind, like, it was so crazy. But for me, it's obvious. Yes, if I harm people, I do want to be held accountable for that. The same way I want other people to be held accountable when they cause harm.
But was there a moment when you thought, we are going too fast?
Yes.
What was that moment?
The moment was the summer of 2019. I remember it very vividly. Before this, I was already very concerned with the safety of AI. The way I got into AI originally was when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I was thinking, how could I improve the world? How could I help people? How could I, fix as many problems as possible? And I thought, well, if I, could automate intelligence, if I automate science, then I could cure all the diseases and, solve all the problems. So I'll just go do that. But what I quickly realized was if I could build something so powerful that it could cure all diseases, whatever that even means, that's a very dangerous thing. It's a very powerful thing. How would you even control something like that? And who should control something like that? So then I realized I had to work on the problem of control and safety. So I was already interested at this time. But at this time, I still thought we had quite a lot of time. I still thought it was decades until we would see the things I was really worried about, which was AGI and superintelligence. At the time, AI systems, they could do some really impressive things. You can play some Atari games, beat the Go world champion, image recognition. They could do some useful things. But it was very brittle. It's quite different from today, where if you wanted to get an AI system to do a new thing, you kind of had to, tweak all the architecture. You had to collect new data. You have to have a bunch of, PhD students stay up all night, trying to get it to work, et cetera, et cetera. It was very brittle. Once you had an AI that could do one thing, that doesn't mean it could do other things too. If it can recognize images, that doesn't mean it can then also play Atari and so on. And then GPT-2 happened. In 2019, OpenAI released a AI system called GPT-2. And by today's standard, it's kind of, almost pathetic. It was a system, what's called a language model, a system that could generate text. And, by today's standard, it's, not that impressive. It could barely string together a couple sentences. But for me, it was just, oh, shit, this is it. This is the thing I was worried about. It's happening way sooner than I thought. And the thing I saw in GPT-2 was that it was a general purpose pattern learner. This was the thing we were missing. Before this, we didn't have general pattern learners. We had pattern learners, but they were quite specific. You could train it for one specific task or one specific thing, but GPT was different. As you gave it more data and more computing power, it learned more and more complex and abstract patterns all by itself. It learned, not just to spell or to use punctuation.
Abstract thinking.
It learned abstract thinking. It learned, if you ask a language model, give me a poem about why I love my dog. This might seem simple in some sense, but in a sense, actually, you have to know a lot of things to do that. You have to know about dogs. You have to know about love, about why humans love dogs. You have to know what a poem is. You have to know how to combine these things. There's actually a lot of facts about reality you need to know, and you need to know how to combine these facts and these patterns of reality to be able to do this quite simple seeming task. And so the crazy thing is no one sat GPT down and said, okay, here's what a poem is. Here's what a dog is. Here's what here's how you combine these things. Nothing of the sort. We just gave it a text and it figured it out by itself. And so for me, it was pretty obvious that, yeah, this was the moment where, it's not quite ready yet. Of course, it's still going to take some years to improve the technology, but now there was no fundamental barrier, from my perspective, towards AGI, artificial general intelligence.
Abstract thinking, free reasoning, that's what makes us humans, right?
It's one of the things that makes us human, yes. It's definitely one of the things that separates us a lot from other animals. I think there's other aspects as well, but yeah, the general purposeness, where you can take a human in many, many different circumstances and they'll figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, this is a thing that's like very special. We don't have in our genome, we don't have pre-coded all of the things we do. We figure new things out. We develop new tools. We come up with new patterns. We find new patterns.
Knowing what you know, would you support the pause on models stronger than GPT-4?
Well, a pause doesn't really work if it's already out. So in terms of would I support the pause of creation of more powerful than currently existent general purpose agentic systems? Yes, I think this is actually necessary because I think we're very close to superintelligence. In the question of should we roll back to say GPT-4 or GPT-5, I think this depends on a few factors, such as like how the hell would you do that? And like what would that mean? If it was like, you have a magic wand and everyone's like okay with it and we all smile, then sure. If it's like we have to have like giga dystopia, like police, oppression to have that, maybe not worth it. I think it really depends. The way I like the way I sometimes say it is like if we were 3 steps wiser than we currently are, we would have never done GPT-3 in the first place. If we were 2 steps wiser than we currently were, then we would have done GPT-3, or ChatGPT. We would have seen this, suddenly get millions of users and do all these crazy things that we not predict, and we'd be like, oh shit, and we would have stopped and like rolled it all back. If we were 1 step wiser than we currently are, we would pause right now.
Was GPT-4 the moment when AI safety lost the race?
I don't think so. I think we were like, I don't think there's like one moment in that regard. I don't think that, because AI safety is not really even racing, never has. Like the progress and the amount of effort going into the questions of AI safety is is pathetic. It's so small and has always been. Like there's never been a time where like we understood AIs or we were in control of AIs. There never was such a point.
Don't you think that agentic AI is like, AI 2.0?
I think it's AI 5.0 probably at this point. Like we've had many generations of AI, from GoFi to narrow neural networks to more broad neural networks to LLMs to agentics. So I say probably like AI 5.0. The difference between agentic systems and say chatbots or like generative AI, which I would say is the last generation, is quite large. There are like many types of tasks that require interaction with the world. Not all, not most, but like maybe most economically valuable tasks involve interaction loops. They're not just one shot. They're like, you try something, you see what happens, you try again, you do something else, you wait for a response, etc. And this is fundamentally agentic. With previous systems, this was very hard or didn't work at all. Like a lot of the earlier like GPT-4 and so on just like couldn't do this. Like it doesn't work. Like you could do them like as like a chat. You could kind of use them, but they couldn't like run their own experiments. They couldn't write their own tools, etc. And that is now changing. I don't think it's a fundamental shift in architecture. Well, we could argue about that actually.
Human replacing?
I think it's very human replacing, yes.
If you could implement just only one amendment, what it would be?
I think the real thing that is important to understand about regulation and laws is that they don't really matter. And what I mean by this is that the thing that really matters is that people enforce laws. This is the thing that matters.
They, you mean decision makers, or they, you mean
everyone?
Public,
everyone from decision makers to cops.
Okay.
Like there has to be a system, courts, everything, where
administration, a broader sense.
Administration, the White House, etc. Like people have to want to enforce a law. So what I mean by this is that if I could wave a magic wand and I could pass the ban superintelligence forever bill, it wouldn't actually matter because obviously companies will find some loophole that like I didn't think about, right? Within 2 weeks, and they'll violate it. And then if people don't believe in it, if the courts don't care, they won't investigate. They won't care, the police won't investigate, and everyone will be just like, and the White House won't investigate, and everyone will be like, whatever. So the real thing that we need is not just one specific law. We need that the government and the courts and the law enforcement apparatus and the national security apparatus understand what is the risk of superintelligence and want it to not happen. This is the real thing that has to happen.
And to say stop.
Yes. And so when it comes to the actual legislation, I think
in some cases.
Yes. I think when it comes to that, the first most important thing is to prohibit the development of superintelligence. The same way that we, for example, prohibit the development of nuclear weapons.
Okay, so my last question, should we stop AI?
AI, no. Of course not. We should make AlphaFold 3. I love AlphaFold. We should make more of it. Or you want to make a little toy or something. I mean, great. You want to use it for, statistics. Great.
Should we stop agentic AI?
Probably, yeah. We're probably, if not, then very soon. Should we stop superintelligence? Absolutely. Agentic AI, edge case. So a very, very important thing to understand. So one of the top tactics that these companies do to try to disempower you, the general public, and policymakers is to try to make you think that you're too stupid to understand it. They're like, let the experts do it. You don't understand.
You're not a researcher.
You're not a researcher, etc. Well, guess what? I am a researcher. I have done all this research, and let me tell you, they're lying to you. You can understand this, and you can have agency, and you deserve to have agency.
And that ideology, right?
Yes, and the ideology, of course. Like, you, as a citizen, have the right to say, wait, I don't want smarter than human things running around that we can't control. Like, maybe you're not technical experts. Well, guess what? The statement I talked about earlier, that the mitigation of risk of extinction should be a priority, it was signed by Sam Altman, Demis Hassabis, Dario Amodei, and for that matter, Geoffrey Hinton, the Nobel Prize-winning inventor of modern AI.
Neural network, right?
Yeah, neural networks. Like, are these people not experts? Like, so this is crazy. So there's a thing where people try to make this seem like it's a complex thing. It's not complex. It's very simple. The only thing you need to understand is they are building very powerful agentic things, and they don't know how to control it. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to understand. And this is a thing that anyone can understand. And so that's why action is important. And what I would recommend to everyone is to go to controlai.org right now and contact your lawmakers. If you're concerned about these issues, you have a right to speak up, and you should speak up to your lawmakers and demand they take action. This might sound, like cliched, but it really matters. When I talk to politicians, I can tell they often tell me if their constituents have reached out to them or not. This makes it much easier for me to explain these issues to them. Like recently we had a conversation with an office of a Congress member, and the person we were talking to was like, oh wow, I've got a lot of letters about superintelligence lately. I'm so glad we can finally talk. And that was through people, general people, expressing these issues for the policymakers. As I said,
to increase the public awareness.
Increase the awareness. Talk to your friends. Demand answers. Like, who the hell do these companies think they are? We should not let them get away with this. And the way to do this is to raise the awareness, to organize, to demand these changes. This is how democracy works.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Kombud Group has become a partner of Bison Fellowship, a program for Central Europe's brightest young scientific talent.